Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second postgraduate live stream of the day. This one is all about fees and funding. My name is Marta, and I'm from the Business and Law Faculty Marketing team, and I will be your host today. We'll be here for another 30 minutes and talking to you about fees and funding opportunities for postgraduate courses. So if this is something that you're interested in, and if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment chat, and we'll address all of your questions in the Q&A at the end of the live stream. I'm not here on my own. I brought an expert on fees and funding. Can we bring Darren? Hi, Darren. How are you doing?
Hi. I'm good, thank you very much. Yes, I'm an expert, I suppose. Yeah, I work with student finance at DMU, so yeah, I do know a bit about postgraduate stuff.
That's perfect. I'm fairly certain that's going to be very useful for the postgraduate students kind of struggling with sort of master degree loans. It's something that we'll be talking about today. And I think the best way to start would be to give a little bit of an overview of master degree loan, which is sort of the main thing you would think about when it comes to postgraduate funding. Is it something that could give us a little bit of an insight into, Darren?
Yeah, certainly. Most of the students that are interested in the postgraduate loan will have already had a loan of some description at undergraduate level. So there are some similarities, but there are also some differences in the way that both of those loan products work. So I'll be going through that today to show you where those differences are and how they might affect students. Essentially, postgraduate loan is a non-means tested loan. So there's one of the first differences. It's not dependent on household income, so they're not really interested in what mum and dad might earn or your partner if you're an older student. So if you're entitled to the funding, then you can have the maximum amount of loan automatically, which for this academic year is £11,222. Yeah, so it's a relatively straightforward application process, as I'll talk about later. The money is it's a maintenance loan, so it's for the student to use how they see fit. Obviously, in most cases, student will use it to pay for their tuition fees and some of their living costs. But again, it's a slight difference with the postgraduate loan insofar as you need to make an arrangement to pay your tuition fees direct to the university. So Student Finance England will pay you. You need to make the arrangement to pay the university your instalment of the funding. So that's the difference. So at undergraduate level, you get a tuition fee loan and a maintenance loan. The tuition fee loan paid direct to the university. Doesn't happen with postgraduate loans. Money comes straight to the student. You only get the maximum allowance. We can get the maximum allowance, 11,222. You need to budget with that money to make sure that your tuition fee is paid, and obviously use the rest for whatever else you need it for. You don't have to take the maximum amount of loan if you only decide that you only need, maybe half, maybe 5,000 is enough for you to cover your costs. Then that's absolutely fine. You're not obliged to take the full loan out. What you can't do is adjust it downwards. So you can't say, I'll have 5,000 at the start and then have that paid to you and then think, actually, I only actually need 2,000. I haven't spent all that 5,000. You can't adjust it downwards, but you can adjust it upwards throughout the year as well. So you can start on 5,000 and think that's enough. Maybe halfway through your course, you actually need a bit more money. You can increase the loan up to the maximum amount. You can't decrease the loan, if you see what I mean. And also the fees will vary as well. That's the other key difference in this. As I've mentioned, some of the course fees are really quite big compared to some of the other courses that we have. So some of the art and design courses are relatively low. Some of the business courses, the actual fee itself will be in excess of the postgraduate loan. So it's something to think about when you're making plans for your postgraduate study and looking at how the finances might work.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. That's a great overview. I just wanted to ask in that case, who is eligible as a student? What are the eligibility criteria for the master degree loan?
Okay, well, there's several categories. The most important one, and this is one where we've seen some some differences perhaps if you were applying to study in this academic year to if you were studying in the next academic year, and that's around residency. Obviously, Brexit has happened. Some of you may have heard about that, I don't know, but that has had quite a big impact on the way that Student Finance England will deal with applications for funding from European students who would ordinarily have had an entitlement to funding as long as they met the personal eligibility criteria and also had been living in in the 3 years before they started their course. So that's changed significantly. I mean, ordinarily you need to be English domiciled, so living in England for 3 years and be able to prove that. And that's something that may be possible for EU students still to do, but you have to be resident here and meet that criteria. So that's something that's changed significantly. So if you are an EU student, that's something to look into in some detail, and our team can help with that. Details we can provide at the end of the presentation to make sure that you meet that criteria. There are other criteria as well about if you're a stateless person or a refugee, etc. So you can, if you meet those additional categories, you can still qualify for the loan, even if you haven't lived in England for 3 years prior to the course starting. But those are quite limited categories. In terms of age, although we do have mature students who are interested in postgraduate study, you have to be under the age of 60 on the first day of the first academic year of your course, and that's always if you're starting in the autumn, September, October, that's always the 1st of September. So you need to be under 60 on the 1st of September, rather, in the year that you're starting your course, in order to meet the age criteria. I am just talking about this. I think a question has come through about whether this is for PhD students or whether this is for master's students. This is there is a postgraduate loan for PhD students that's available. I'm not going to be talking about it in this presentation because it's quite complicated and very different to the master's one. So perhaps we can take your details and send you some information about it at the end as well. So I wonder whether you could facilitate that in the background there, please. Thanks.
Yeah, we'll put out all the contact details in the chat, and you kind of got the question first before I could.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for answering. Yeah, there is a loan, but yeah, I'm assuming that it's much more complicated than the master degree.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, there's a separate presentation, in fact. Yeah, and the other two main things which can affect your personal eligibility for funding is if you owe Student Finance England any money from a previous loan. That doesn't mean that you can't have loans with Student Finance England for undergraduate study. That's absolutely fine, and vast majority of students will already have those loans. What it actually means is that they've asked you to repay the money, and you haven't, so you've maybe had a different type of debt to them and you haven't paid it back, and you owe money is outstanding. That may affect your postgraduate master's loan entitlement, but it will affect very, very small number of students. As I say, it's perfectly fine to have an existing undergraduate loan and still get the postgraduate maintenance loans, not a problem at all. And the final area where there is slightly different regulations is if you're a social work student, which you may be entitled to a social work bursary for. So if you're in receipt of a social work bursary, you can't get a postgraduate maintenance loan as well. You can get only one or the other, and if you're entitled to a social work bursary, that's the one you have to take first. The only circumstance in which a master's loan will be payable to a social work student, a master's social work student, is if that student has applied for a social work bursary and been rejected from it, either because they're not eligible for it or that there are none left because there are only a certain number available in each year. But a lot of these questions will come up at the end, I'm sure, and I can clarify anything else.
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you so much. We have some questions coming in and we'll address all of them at the end of the Q&A session. So thank you so much for sending in those to us. And yeah, if you have any other questions, just send them in the chat and we'll answer them at the very end. Thank you so much for giving us some insight into the eligibility, so student eligibility. How about courses? Are all postgraduate courses eligible for the master loan, or is there any sort of rules in relation to that as well?
Yes, there are rules, and this is another area where it is very different compared to undergraduate study, where you would expect vast majority of courses to be eligible at undergraduate level. For postgraduate level, not all postgraduate courses are eligible for the postgraduate master's loan. It has to be a master's level course, so you have to be enrolling on a master's course at the outset with the intention of completing a master's at the end of it. If you're wanting to do a PG DIP or a PG CERT course, unfortunately they're not eligible under Student Finance England regulations. If you live in Northern Ireland, they may be. But if you normally would be residing in England and Student Finance England is your agency that deals with your student funding, then those lower qualifications aren't eligible for funding. You've got to be doing 180 credits for your masters as well. So there are situations where people who might already have a postgraduate certificate or a postgraduate diploma come in and already have 60 or 120 credits and then do another 60 or 120 to top up to master's level. Those courses aren't eligible. You can't have what they call RPL, which is recognised prior learning, which exempts you from any number of credits within your course. So if you're topping up or you're bringing credits from a previous study or previous employment and you're exempted from doing the 180 credits, then you're not going to be eligible for the master's loan. And they will ask you that question when you're making your application as well. It can be a full-time course, it can be a part-time course, it can be distance learning. So there's no differentiation between those things in terms of postgraduate master's loan. All of them are valid modes of attendance. Where there is slight differences is around the course length. So not all courses will be, depending on the length, will be eligible for funding. If it's a one-year full-time course, absolutely fine. If it's a 2-year part-time course that has a 1-year full-time equivalent, that's absolutely fine as well. So it can be a full-time course lasting 1 or 2 academic years, part-time course lasting 2 academic years that has a 1-year full-time equivalent, or a part-time course lasting 3 or 4 academic years that has a 2-year full-time equivalent, or a part-time course lasting up to 3 years that has no full-time equivalent. So it's quite complicated, but what we'll find is that the vast majority of DMU courses that are either 1 year full-time or 2 years part-time will be eligible for funding, and you can check that with our team. Again, details will be available at the end of the presentation. Where there are some issues is around some of the chem courses. So that's the computing and media faculty, where there are part-time courses that last 2 to 6 years. Now, those aren't eligible because they can last longer than 2 years. There's no requirement for them to be completed within 2 years. So be wary if you're thinking of doing something like, I'm trying to think of an example, but something like engineering management part-time or something like that. Yeah, those chem courses at part-time level aren't always eligible. So it's, again, worth checking before you get to the stage of making your application. And the final 2 things has to be a fixed end date. So I've mentioned that just a moment ago. You can't have a course that is flexible and you can kind of finish it when you like. Has to have a fixed end date. And also, and this is a difference to the undergraduate funding, there's no repeat year funding. So if you were doing a part-time course over 2 years and you failed all or part of the first year, you wouldn't get funding for the second year until you've progressed to the second year of your program. So there's no repeat funding. And again, that's a key difference between undergraduate and postgrad funding.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. It's very interesting that you have to have a set date. So even if a student wants to do a part-time course within 2 years but has an option to do 6 years, they still have they won't be
No, not
eligible.
eligible. There's specific regulations that say that you, even if a course lasts longer and you complete it in a shorter time, it's not eligible for funding. It has to be a standardised fixed end course.
That's very interesting. I was not aware of that when I was applying for my postgraduate loan. It's very good. I went for a full-time option in that case.
There you are.
So
That's the
now
best way of doing it.
that's true, but then it's quite tricky if you're working at the same time.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
obviously, yeah, part-time is quite useful in that sense. So now I wanted to ask about something that's perhaps not the most exciting part of the process. However, it is a very useful sort of thing to know and something that I believe a lot of students would be interested in. And that's the repayment of the master degree loan. Is it in any way similar or different than sort of the undergrad that my student will know when they sort of go into doing a master degree?
Yeah, well, it is very similar in the way that it's organised. If you have to repay, you meet the repayment requirements, it will come out through your salary. So that's the same as the undergraduate one. Where there are differences is around the repayment threshold and the amount that you'll pay back. So in all cases, the repayment process is entered once you in the April after you've either left the course or you've graduated. That's the first point you'll be asked to go through that process to see whether you have to repay or not. It's linked to the salary. So if you have to make repayments, your company will do that out of your salary. The threshold is lower than undergraduate. So what that actually means in effect is that you will likely start to repay your postgrad loan before you start to repay your undergraduate loan. So the threshold is 21,000 for the postgraduate loan, and the proportion that you repay is also lower for postgraduate. So the undergraduate threshold is around about 25,725, I think, at the moment. So this one is 21,000. So there may be some time difference between you starting to repay your undergraduate loan rather than your postgraduate one. For the postgraduate one, you'll be paying 6% of your earnings over that limit. So if your salary is 23,000, for example, the difference between 23,000 and 21,000, which is the threshold, is 2,000. So you'll be paying 6% of 2,000 over 12 months, and that will come direct from your salary. Interest rates are charged. Obviously, we have to talk about interest rates as well. So they will be levied on your loan from the point that you take the first payment or the first payment is made to you. The current rate is 5.6%. So that is the retail price index. That was kind of inflation, one of the inflation measures the government uses, which is 2.4% plus, which is 2.6%. It's 5.6 overall anyway, is the amount. So they take the retail price index, add 3% to it, and that's your interest rate, and that lasts until 31st of August 2021. It gets reviewed annually depending on how those figures work for that year. Yeah, and the loan belongs to the student, obviously, and isn't recorded on your credit score. So ordinarily, it shouldn't have an impact on the availability of credit for you if you wanted to a personal loan or a mortgage or anything, unless you are in arrears. So unless you've asked the student loan company have asked you to repay money, you've entered repayment, you're earning over the figure and you haven't paid that. It shouldn't have any effect on your credit score or anything like that at all. And the loan belongs to the student, and any loan not repaid after 30 years is written off. So yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. Now, I wanted to ask about the sort of, I suppose, the sort of core of it, how to apply for a master degree loan. Because obviously, the process, again, students will know the undergraduate loan process. Is it any way different than the undergraduate loan process?
Same as everything else, really, about this. It has similarities, but there are differences as well. It's all done online, of course, as your undergraduate loan was done. It's all done on the same customer reference number, so it's the same account effectively, and it's relatively straightforward. I think it's a much easier thing to apply for than applying for your undergraduate stuff, because you haven't got to put your parents' income details in and various other things. It's also an apply once product as well. So what that means is if you're perhaps doing your course over 2 years, part-time, you only need to make an application once during that time in order to get the maintenance, to get the full postgraduate loan. You haven't got to do a separate one for each year like you have to at undergraduate level. So that's, again, a plus point in terms of making it easier. You can apply within any year of study. So if you were doing it part-time, if you didn't apply in the first year, you could still apply in the second year and still get the full loan amount paid to you. This is a Student Finance England product mainly. So if you are from or you live ordinarily in Northern Ireland or Wales, there are different postgraduate loan products available to you. The Welsh one is a little bit different to the English one. It's certainly more generous, and they do ask for household income details. But the plus side of it is that it's financially much more generous than the English one. Northern Irish one, very different. It's only an tuition fee loan, so it's kind of like the old tuition fee loans for the undergraduates, where the money comes directly to the university. And it's only capped at quite a low amount, it's 5,500. But most people will be Student Finance England, and you apply in the normal way. The cycle for applications opens quite late compared to the undergraduate. So undergraduate is normally around sort of mid-February sort of time. This is normally mid-May. Last year it was a bit later because of everything that was going on. Around about May, early June, that the application cycle opens, and it's much quicker to submit an application. Less information required. The process normally once you've submitted your approved application, if everything is fine with the application, you normally get an answer within a couple of weeks. Which, if you apply for undergraduate at the same time of year, you're probably looking for 6 to 8 weeks as a minimum. So it's much easier application process, much less painful for students, a lot more straightforward.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. Yes, definitely from my experience as well, it was a much quicker process as well. So I wanted to change a little bit and move away from the master's degree loan. Is there any other funding opportunities available at DMU that could perhaps give us a little bit of an insight into?
Yeah, certainly. There are other funding options available that might be helpful. So we've got the Vice Chancellor's Scholarship, of course. So if you're a recent graduate from DMU and you meet the criteria for eligibility on that, and I think you have to have a minimum of a 2-1. I'm stroking my beard there because I'm not sure. Yeah, I think it's a minimum of 2-1 that you need to have and be a recent graduate, and you can get a discount on your tuition fees for a master's course. There are some exemptions, I think. We can to that. You can have a look at what the regulations were in this academic year. We've got other information about postgraduate scholarships as well that we can provide on our website, and give you options with regard to some other funding that's available. Certainly, if you've been Leicester, if you're a resident of Leicester and Leicestershire, some charitable options available to you with interest-free loans, which you can see on our link to the website that's available. And we have our support fund as well, which is what kind of a big pot of money that we have my colleagues in the Student Finance and Welfare team administer, and it's for students who are in financial hardship and have circumstances which perhaps unexpected or they didn't anticipate before starting the course, which the fund may be able to help out with. It's certainly not something you should regard as a guaranteed source of funding, because the expectation is, if you're a postgraduate student, is that you've got funding in place, you've made provision to fund your studies successfully throughout the length of your course. But if there is something that happens, we've had a lot of, obviously, things happen in the last 6 to 8 months around COVID and various other things where students have been able to access that fund to help support their studies and make sure that they are able to stay on their courses. And there's a couple of other, there's an alumni scholarship as well for international students, and international scholarships are available as well. Again, details on our websites. We've got links to that we can let people have.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. We have a couple of questions and we'll be addressing them very shortly. Just before the Q&A session starts, I just wanted to ask you to address one more thing, because you've been so informative regarding the master degree loans. I wanted to give you, for you to give us a little bit of information about what your team does, besides obviously helping students with funding, and sort of what students can come to you with, if that's okay.
Yep. So yeah, our team is very experienced. We've got kind of two parts to our team. We've got the student finance team and the welfare part of our student finance team. My team are the student finance team. We deal with anything relating to student finance. So if you have queries about eligibility or with the application process, perhaps there is a problem or you didn't understand something that Student Finance England have told you, and that's not an unusual situation, then we can help with that. And we can give you advice and guidance around the application process, how to resolve those issues. The team also deals with more kind of everyday kind of stuff as well, so smart cards for students, letters and certificates for things like council tax exemption, letters for proof of study for various kind of places. So any kind of that day-to-day stuff that you need from to continue with your studies, kind of admin-y kind of stuff we deal with. Then there's the welfare team. They deal with anything relating to what we call financial capability, so anything around kind of money and student life. So they can help with more in-depth stuff around student finance problems. So if you've got real problem with your student finance you can't resolve, they can help you with that. They can liaise with Student Finance England between you and discuss that. They operate the support fund. They give general money advice, so budgeting advice. They can also help with things like debts as well and give debt advice and liaise with debt agencies, those sorts of things. So covers quite a wide area. And I would encourage any student that's having any kind of financial issue to contact us in the first instance so that we can see if we can help. And in most cases, we will be able to help.
That's perfect. Wonderful. Okay, now we have 3 minutes left, so we'll try to answer as many questions as possible. We have a question regarding international students and whether they qualify. So the question is, do international students qualify? I'll be coming to the UK to start my course. I believe that is referring to master degree loan.
No, you need to, unless you are coming to the UK in special categories, so you're a refugee or stateless person, an international student, can't qualify for a postgraduate loan on the basis you need to be living in the UK for a minimum 3 years prior to the start of the course.
So to kind of get into that a little bit on that question, we had another one which is referring to sort of international fees as well. Is there any international scholarships that students can look into?
I believe there's the International Alumni Scholarship and the International Scholarship. Those, I believe, are something to look into, not especially my area of expertise. So, and it's certainly not something that my team are involved with. So, yeah, there are some options. Again, the links to the website can be available.
Yeah, we'll put the link in the chat as well. There's a team designed for that, so they'll be able to answer your questions in regards to the international scholarships. There's a couple of them available, so it's something useful to look into as well. Now, another question that we have is whether we're still offering 50% off from RAI. That would, I'm assuming, refer to the Vice Chancellor.
If it's referring to the Vice Chancellor Scholarship, I believe so. I haven't seen details of what the Vice Chancellor Scholarship bursary will be for the next academic year. Certainly was in operation this year, so you could look at what the criteria was this year, and it would probably cover what your question is regarding. So I would like to say so. Again, it's not my area of expertise, certainly, and it's not an area that my team really deal with. But I would anticipate that it's run for the last 5 or 6 years, so I would anticipate it running much along the same lines for the next academic year as well.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you. So just wanted to quickly address Stephen's question regarding the sort of international scholarships as well. That would be kind of a very similar answer. We have a section on our website regarding international scholarships, and it would be best for you to contact the team and see whether you're eligible for any of the scholarships. There is, I believe, a discount scholarship depending on sort of you paying a certain amount. So perhaps that's something to look into. And for you, Darren, I wanted to know whether you could answer a question that we got regarding applying late. So can a student apply after 2-3 years into the course?
It depends on what the course is, but I mean, yeah, I mean, if it's an eligible course and it's over 2 or 3 years, then you can apply in any year of that course. However, you would need to have been eligible for funding at the beginning of that course, if you see what I mean. So if you're starting your course maybe this year, and you don't apply for your funding until maybe 2 years down the line, you still need to have been eligible at the outset of your course starting, in order to be eligible to apply for the loan.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you so much. All right, we are done with the live stream today. We've run for 30 minutes, so hopefully we've answered all the questions, at least most of them, and hopefully that was very informative for everyone watching. We'll put information and contact details in the chat as well, just so if anyone's got any further questions, they can contact Darren and his team. And yeah, if you need any support. So thank you so much for joining us today. We have a couple of more live streams regarding postgraduate studies that are running today, so make sure to join as well, and have a nice day, everyone.
Thanks very much.